All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. For your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be, if you're on a mobile device, it's going to be below the video. If you're on a laptop, desktop, computer, it's going to be to the right of the video. I always start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So scrolling down here, I'll be starting with, looks like Barry B. So if you post your question more than an hour ago, so before 10 a.m. Eastern time, and you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is copy and paste your question in there, and it will get answered. The reason why I do that is I just want to make sure I'm answering questions for people who are here to actually see their question get answered. If you posted your question at 2 a.m. last night, most likely you're not here right now. So I want to make sure, I want to give precedence to the people who are actually here. So starting here with Barry B. Says, hello Q, working through the TSG lag 1.4 video. Can you help me understand the body motion from once lag is built up to release? I'm currently having inconsistent contact when working with the drill. So we need to have the body opening up as we're coming into contact, ideally. So you're in the way. Just sit over there, please. Thank you. Oh, there you go. So basically, when we get to this max lag position, and when we're talking about max lag, typically where that is when this lead arm is about parallel to the ground in the downswing. That's typically where you're going to see that. So along with this, what we want to have happen is we want to have the body to keep rotating as we're coming into contact. That's the real important part of this. Now, it may not be the body motion that is the issue. It's probably just a different way of swinging the club that's really the issue. And it's going to take some time and repetition before you get to where you're hitting the golf ball correctly, Barry. So don't give up on it. Start out slow, build up the speed from there. But what we really need to have is some hip rotation as we're coming down. So if you're getting this lag and you're just throwing the club all arms, you're going to have a tendency to be a little bit more inconsistent. So you want to make sure that as we're getting this max lag position, that we're also rotating the body as we're coming through. And that's the proper body motion. That's what we see in the best players. But you can also hit great shots without body rotation. You're just going to release the club a little bit early. You're still going to get the benefit of having some lag right here, but you're typically going to release the club early if you don't get any body rotation. Because if you imagine, if I were to start rotating, right, or if I start throwing my arm and I stop my hand suddenly, what's going to happen to this club, right? It's going to want to flip forward. So that's the same thing that happens with the body. If I come down here and I just stop my rotation of my body, my arms are going to want to race in front of my body. So we want to keep the body rotating so that way we can release that club more out in front. We'll talk about that more in the straight line release course. But in the lag course, we just focus on getting some lag, not casting from the very beginning, but getting some lag initially in the swing. And then once we get to the straight line release course, you'll get much better at releasing it out in front. But understand, your body's learning a new way to swing the golf club. There's going to be inconsistencies there. Not everything that you learn when you swing the golf club, actually most things are going to result in instant success, right? Instantly better. Sometimes it happens, but most of the time, when you're actually trying to change a movement pattern, you don't have the coordination to swing your body and hit the golf ball well that way yet. You have your natural, motion that you use, that you've been using forever to swing the golf club, and you have coordination with that motion. Now that motion may be inconsistent. It may make it difficult to be consistent, but that's the best you can do right now. Until you change your motion, which you have to start out slow, build up the speed from there. From there, then you can start to build that coordination with that new motion, and you're going to be able to hit the golf ball well and more consistency because you changed your motion for the better. And that's what the lag is. So hip rotation is what you're going to need eventually, but I wouldn't worry about that too much right now. I'd be just worrying about getting this angle of lag and getting that club on the golf ball from there, and then you can just keep on building the swing. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? We know that, so it's going to take some time, some repetition to get to where you're much better with it. So Marlon M says, morning Q, what should be the feeling at the top of the swing? Should it be like pulling the grip away from you and down to create lag, or pulling an arrow out of the quiver is a common mindset? Well, first of all, feel is relative. So what you feel in the swing and what I feel in the swing are going to be two different things. So you got to kind of play around with feels and things like that. But I typically like the pulling out of the quiver, because if you generally, when you're at the top of the swing and if you feel a pulling down like this, generally that's going to lead to coming down steep, right? So if I get up here and I try to yank the club down like this, that's going to come in down steep. So I don't really like that feeling. I like the feeling more of the hands moving out away from the body, right? Like I'm taking an arrow out of the quiver, that moving away from the body to create this lag. Because typically that's not going to be a steep motion. That's going to be more of a shallow and lag motion. But you got to find what works best for you. The pulling down feeling may work best for you. You know, Sergio Garcia talked about, you know, when he was, when he talks about how much lag he gets, he talks about yanking down the chain, right? Well, that feeling works really well for him because he shallows the crap out of the club, right? And that really helps him to create a lot of speed. Most people aren't going to be in that situation. So if you're someone who's already coming down steep, that feeling of pulling down is most likely not going to be a good feeling. It could be, but most likely it's not going to be. The feeling of the quiver coming out is more than likely going to be the better feeling for most people. But again, feeling's relative, can be a little bit different for everybody. That's why there's not just one lag drill or one lag feeling. You know, if there's one thing that gave everybody lag, we just have one video and we would just call it a day, right? But there's not. That's because there's so many different. The brain is very different for a lot of people, so you just gotta. Everyone learns in a little different ways. Visual learners versus other types of learners. It all makes where you have to have a lot of different feelings out there to try to get the same thing essentially. So Charlie Z says, so I played 9 yesterday and was having the same issue with the compression swing falling apart at the swing as the swing got bigger. I think I might be straightening my legs too early and the ball is close to my feet. You just have to look on video and see what's going on there. I highly recommend you video your swing so that way you can see what's going on. It's hard for me to say without more information. Or Charlie, if you want to give me a little bit more. Oh, then he goes on to say, sorry. Something I could get away with my slice swing, but creates a bottleneck with a compression swing thought. I'm not sure what you mean by the compression swing thought. So I played 9 yesterday, was having the same issue with the compression swing falling apart. What's the compression swing? Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're talking about, Charlie. If you want to give me a little bit more information, I'll be happy to help in any way I can. Or ask a question or something like that, because I'm not sure what you're exactly asking me or what you're wanting help with. So Sean F says, Q, I have had huge success with the power turn. Probably gained 30 to 40 yards off the tee. That's awesome. Said I've been trying to find that video about the rope and feeling your waist or shoulders turned by a rope. The example really helped me, and I'd like to review it again. I don't know if we have an actual video where Clay talks about the rope feelings. I think he recently shot a video where he's talking about that, but I don't think we have a current video that's available where he talks about that. But essentially, just to go into a little bit about what Sean's talking about, the power turn is really, really essential for distance. It's the easiest and best thing that you can do to get some distance. So if you look at your shoulder turn, it looks like this. You are leaving a lot of distance on the table. So I would highly recommend getting to at least 90 degrees. Your average tour player is around 120 degrees. Distance is just a big part of playing well. It's the highest correlation to lower scores. People who have lower handicaps generally hit the ball further. So it's easy to understand why, right? So longer drives shorter approaches, closer proximity to the hole, better chances for birdie, right? So so that's what I would recommend is working. If you're struggling with distance, the power turn or the 20-minute distance fix, basically where we encompass all of the things that give you a lot of distance. But one big thing people don't realize is it's not just a shoulder turn that's going on. We need our hips to turn too. So your average tour player is turning their hips about 50 degrees. They're separating their rib cage here from their pelvis, another 50 degrees, right? So if I keep my pelvis square and I turn my rib cage, there's another 50 degrees. And then they, like I said, it was an average of 120. So we got 50 pelvis, 50 rib cage. That's 100. Where's the remaining 20 come from? That's coming from the protraction and retraction of the shoulders. So if you think about your shoulder blades, shoulder blade moving toward the spine is retraction. Shoulder blade moving away from the spine is protraction. So when I go up the top here, my lead shoulder is protracting and my trail shoulder is retracting. So that gives me another 20 degrees typically. Typically get about 10 degrees out of each one. So if we're lacking in there, if we're only turning our rib cage or if we're only doing our shoulders, the biggest issue I see is people don't open up the hips. So that feeling that I talked about was about how you would have a rope attached to your belt loop here. If you imagine, let's say that I had a rope attached to my belt loop and the rope was wrapped around me like this, and then somebody was standing over there, and in the backswing, they were pulling on that to turn my hips, right? That's the feeling that you want to have, is that your hips are being turned. I don't want to feel like I'm going like this. That's not turning the hips. That's the big thing that I see. A lot of people, when they try to turn the hips, they actually slide the hips. When you slide the hips, that locks you up even more. So we want to turn that hip going back. You're not going to see very many tour players that slide their hips very much. You'll see some that initially kind of get a trigger in a bump off of the ball a little bit, but basically they'll move like an inch and then right away they're turning that hip back and out of the way. So you got to have that hip turn to max that out. Now, if you're struggling with this, just as an extra tip here, what I would do is I would angle this foot, your trail foot, out a little bit more. And I'd also loosen this heel in the backswing to allow it to come off the ground. It's completely fine to take your heel off the ground. Look at a lot of the best players of all time: Jack Nicklaus, Sam Snead, current players, Bubba Watson, Molinari. There's a lot of players that lift the heel off the ground. It's completely fine to let that heel come off the ground. What that allows you to do is that allows you to free up your hips even more to turn. And what turning this foot out at address does is it allows you to free up this hip even more, because when you're turning in the backswing, your leg is internally rotating, right? So if you have a limitation in your internal rotation, as I do, I can only, if you watch here, I can only turn in my foot maybe 20 degrees, not very much. I have lots of external rotation. I can do that quite a bit. I can turn my foot out, well over 90 degrees, but I can't turn my foot in very much. So what I have to do in order to make sure that I get a good hip turn is I have to set up with my feet angled out a little bit. That allows me to turn my body. So that's a big part of being able to get some good power in the swing. We talk about this in the 20-minute distance fix, but as far as a specific video on where Clay talks about the rope thing, like I just talked about, I don't know of a specific video where he does that other than the one that we recently shot that isn't available yet. We haven't edited it and put it on the site yet, but he does mention this in several videos on the website. I'm sorry, I wish I knew exactly which one to send you to, but that's essentially what it is. It's just a belt buckle or the rope attached to the belt loop, and then it's wrapped around your waist. Someone standing over here kind of back behind you. Like if I had a clock in front of me, this would be noon on the clock. That'd be 7:30 over there. That's basically where somebody would be standing, and they'd be pulling on that. And that gets you to where if they were pulling on that, you wouldn't be going like that, right? You're going to be pulling straight back like that, pulling that hip back and out of the way. All right, so Donald B says, would maintaining a flat wrist or a very strong grip with the left hand square the face like the move would. Not exactly, because you have to have the trail hand too. The trail hand has to be involved in that too. So the trail hand, the hands have to be working together. So if you have, it can help and make it easier to square the face, but it's not going to do the exact same thing. I can still have a strong grip here and flip the crap out of the club when I come into contact. I can still do that, right? So it's not going to take away what you have to do when you come into contact. You still have to have this right wrist bent back. You still have to have this lead wrist and more of a if you're from that angle, it looks like it's cupped, but if you look from this angle, it's very flat or even slightly bowed, right? So that still has to happen. It's not gonna take away from what if you flip, if you flip with a strong grip, you're still gonna hit the ball a mile to the left. If you just strengthen your grip and think, well, now I'm doing the move, well, you're not, because if you still do the same thing you were doing before and flip, that face is just going to be really, really closed instead of being square but no forward shaft lean before. Now you'll just have no forward shaft lean, but you'll be just closing the face instead. So we need the shaft leaning forward along with that, and you need to have these wrist angles there at contact. You still need to twist the club. You still need to have the wrist angles like this when you're coming into contact. Otherwise, you're still going to flip. And with a strong grip, now you're just going to hit it to the left along with it. All right. Let's keep on moving. So Charlie Z says, working through the compression videos. Are you talking about the compression line? If I shorten the swing to a pitch shot, I can feel the compression as my right hand compresses down on the ball. The longer the swing, the more I go back to the flip. Yeah, so that's pretty normal. So when things are moving slower, like I can hold these angles, right? So I can hold these angles like this. But as the club gets longer, there's more speed and there's more forces acting on this club to make it want to release early. So what I would try to do, since you're able to do it, kind of in these short swings, is I would really just try to go a little bit longer and a little bit faster and try to accomplish the same thing. A little bit longer, a little bit faster, accomplish the same thing. And eventually you'll get to where you're doing a nice long swing. A good feeling that I like to do with this is I like to feel like, one, my belt buckle is ahead of my hands, and then my hands are ahead of the club head. So yeah, I know when you look at impact, it looks like maybe that the belt buckle is ahead of my hands, or sorry, that my hands are ahead of my belt buckle when I come into contact. But that's not the reality. If you look at it, if I turn this way and I have my hips 45 degrees open, you can see that my belt buckle is well ahead of my hands. It just looks like that from this angle straight on because of the angle of the video. So you can't really push your hands ahead of your belt buckle. It's really, really difficult to do. There's just forces acting on the club that aren't going to allow that to do. That just aren't going to allow it to do that. The kind of the forces I talked about earlier, when we stall out the hips, let's say that I throw this club, right? And then I bring my hand to a complete stop. What's this club going to want to do? It wants to release. So I have to keep everything moving. So that feeling of the belt buckle ahead of my hands and then the hands ahead of the club head allows me to open up and keep everything moving as you're coming through contact. So what would that look like? That would look like this. As I bring this club up, I now have my hands are behind my belt buckle. My belt buckle is ahead of my hands, and I have that club lagged back. Now I'm just trying to keep that as I'm coming into. So at address, everything's pretty much lined up, right? My hands are in line with my belt buckle, and my club head's in line with my hands. Pretty much all lined up right there. Now as I bring this club back, my arms are going back away from my belt buckle, and I'm still turning my belt buckle back when my arms are going back away from my belt buckle, and I'm hinging this club back. So that's coming from those wrist motions that I talked about. So that gets that club, that gets everything behind. So now I want to keep everything in that sequence. So I want to feel like that. And I would feel like this club doesn't release at all initially, right? You're trying to basically keep that all the way through. So you can see as I do this, I get it back and then I go like that. As I do that, my hands are still behind my belt buckle and the club head's still behind my hands. If you look at it from this angle, I won't be able to swing back. But as I'm coming through, right, I'm like this. My belt buckle is pointed that way, so my hands are still behind it and that club head's over here. So I would work on that, exaggerating that feeling a little bit and let that club hit the ground. If you notice here, I'm letting that club kind of get down into the ground. I think that's a big reason. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people struggle with flipping is because they're afraid to hit the ground. Because when you flip, what happens is that club comes in very level with the turf. So if you ever hit the ground, you're most likely going to be hitting the ground before the golf ball, right? Unless you really slide forward. You can slide forward and flip and get ground contact in front of the golf ball. But if you're not sliding forward and you flip, basically you have to pick the ball every single time, right? So that's when you just get into that feeling where you don't want to hit the ground. So it just makes it worse because you're just going to release it even more to make sure that you don't hit the ground, to make sure it comes in nice and level with the golf ball. So when you're doing this drill, don't be afraid to let that club kind of dig into the ground because that's what the best players are doing. They're making ball first contact and the club's going into the ground. So when you're doing this drill, kind of let that club hit the ground where the golf ball is. And I think you'll be surprised at how hard this ball will come off of there. I have a little foam ball here, and I'll just do a little short swing with this, hitting this ball where I'm replicating that same feeling. I mean, it came off there like a rocket. It was hard. So take that feeling and kind of take it to your longer swing. Build it up. Make the swing faster and longer, little by little by little, and it should help. So Cliff R says, should the turning of the shaft in the move also be applied to the driver and 3-wood? Yes. The move is applied to all clubs. All clubs. It's even when you're pitching and all these things. So what we have to understand exactly what is the move. The move is a combination. It's one move that's a combination of two things. One is shallowing out the club. And the reason why we want to shallow out the club is because we want to get that club on plane as soon as possible, back on plane as soon as possible. If it's not on plane, then what's going to happen is we're either going to be off plane, right, which we don't want. We don't want to come over the top, cut across the ball, or in some rare cases, people get the club too far shallow and we're way under plane. Or what will happen is we'll make a compensation later in the swing to be able to get the club back on plane. So that would look, the most common thing is coming down steep initially. So people are like this, the club is steep, it's more vertical right here, it's off plane. So now I know my options are I either have to swing way over the top or stick this club right in the ground. Now some people pick over the top. Very rarely do I see people just stick the club right into the ground. Maybe a total beginner might do that. But what most people do is they will stand up. And when you stand up, that raises the handle. It drops that club back on plane. And now I'm swinging on plane, but I stood up and I have to flip at the golf ball. So if we get this club shallowed out initially like this, so we're here and then it's shallowed out initially, well, now I can stay in my posture and just rotate through impact. The other thing that the move is getting that face square earlier in the swing. So we shallow the club as early as possible in the swing, in the downswing, and we squared the face as soon as possible in the downswing. What that allows us to do is the same thing. We don't have to flip and roll the hands over to square up the face. We can stay in our posture and just turn hard into the golf ball. And this is what the best players do. If you look at Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, basically any of the top players, Roy McIlroy, Tiger Woods. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Name all the top 100 players in the world, and they basically, every single one of them do this with every single one of their clubs. So it's just getting the club on plane and squaring the face earlier. You want to do that with the driver. You want to do it with the 3-wood. You want to do it on your pitch shots. Now, you won't need to on a pitch shot because the club's already kind of in a shallow position. You typically don't need to shallow it even more. It's already on plane, but you're still doing the move. The move is just getting the club on plane early in the downswing and squaring the face earlier. Typically with a pitch, you already have that face square. You're not rolling the face way open like this. Now, some people do, and they're most likely not very good pitchers of the golf ball, so they need to get that face square earlier in the downswing. That's basically all the move is just getting the club on plane and getting the club face square as soon as possible in the downswing. Now, a big question that I get is, well, why don't we just do that in the backswing? It's so much easier to do it in the backswing. Because what you do, having the club shallow in the backswing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be shallow in the downswing. And having the face square in the backswing doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be square in the downswing. Now, as far as the squaring is concerned, you have a better chance of keeping that club square if you are squaring in the backswing. So that'd be like someone like a Jon Rahm or Dustin Johnson, Daniel Berger. You look at these guys at the top of the swing, their wrists are like this. They already have that face square. The face is already shut. So they really need to do from there is shallow the club and turn into the golf ball. And that's what they do. If you look at all of them, they all do that. So you have a better chance, but it's hard to do. It's really, really difficult to do that. If you don't have the dexterity, the wrist flexibility to be able to do that, it can be very, very difficult. There's a reason why not everyone looks like this at the top of the swing. Most players are either going to be flat to slightly bowed. You see some players that are a little bit more, but it's really not much more. Even like a Jon Rahm, he's basically like this at the top. Dustin Johnson, I mean, it's like a 90-degree angle at the top there with the wrist. He has a lot of wrist flexibility to be able to do that. So you could do that, but it has to also be happening in the downswing as well. What I see a lot, I've actually had students that try to do the DJ move at the top, and then in the downswing, they just go like this. They just completely undo it. Well, that's not doing you any good. It needs to be happening in the beginning of the downswing as well. Just like, the shallowing of the club in the backswing, that usually is going to work against you. So if I bring this club back and I'm really, really shallow, typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down really steep in the downswing because of the momentum of the club is just going to want to go like that. So I typically don't recommend trying to really shallow the club in the backswing because it usually leads to steep backswing. It's actually usually better to have a steep backswing to make it easier to shallow in the downswing. Now, there are some players that basically already have the club on plane, like a Bryson DeChambeau or a Matt Kuchar or something like that. These are flat swing guys, so they really don't have to do much to shallow out the club. It's just a tiny bit of shallowing that they have to do. The problem with that, and Bryson doesn't do this on his driver swing, by the way. He only really does it on his iron swing. But with Bryson's driver swing, he swings more vertically and shallows it out. He does not swing on one plane with his driver swing. He used to, and he hits the ball a lot further now not doing that. But anyway, like a Matt Kuchar, he basically swings it on one plane for the most part, shallows it out a little bit in the downswing. And, not a real long hitter, even though he's a pretty big, lanky guy, he's not a real long hitter. Now, the reason why he's not a real long hitter is because you don't have as much space and time to accelerate this club. When you get the club up higher, you have more space and time to accelerate the club so you can get more speed. So there's a pro and a con to it. You can hit the ball a little bit straighter, theoretically, and be more consistent if you have a flatter swing. And you can hit the ball further and theoretically be less consistent with the longer swing. You just have to find what works best for you. Obviously, Bubba Watson, he gets the club way, way up here and shallows it out. And he's one of the best ball strikers ever. Nobody has more control of his ball flight than Bubba Watson. He's excellent control of his ball flight. You can't hit those crazy curving shots like he does if you didn't have control of what you were doing there. So that's basically the main thing with the move there. It's just getting the club on plane sooner and getting that club face square earlier. You're doing it with every single club in your bag. If you want to be very consistent, that's what you want to do. All right. So George P says, as you work through the move and post the left leg or push away to straighten, as the video suggests, how do you prevent the weight not to shift back to the trail side? Momentum. So you're going to have momentum going to your lead side, and then you're going to turn through onto the lead foot. So you're not going to push, you're not going to get your momentum going to the lead side and then push it back that way. You're going to push and rotate your body open and post up that way. That's what you're going to do. Charlie Z says, trying to clarify in the videos hitting a solid draw, you talk about closing the club face to create compression draw. Yeah, so the face has to be closed to the path to hit a draw. So the face, the direction the club face is pointing, has to be close to the path, which is the direction the club head is moving through impact. So you need to be swinging to the inside with a face that is closed to the path, but open to your target. If you want the ball to start or to end up on target with a draw, the face actually has to be open to your target, but closed to your path. So to put numbers on it, let's say I wanted to hit a little baby draw, and my path was 4 degrees into out. Well, to hit a baby draw on target, I would need to have my face to be half of that. So my face would need to be 2 degrees open. So 2 degrees pointed to the right with the face, 4 degrees with my path. My path or my face is closed to my path, but it's open to my target. So it's going to start a little bit right of my target and then curve to back to the target. So Don G says, with the driver, how do I get my right elbow back to my side after I tried to get my hands up high? I would do it slowly at first. So get it up here, and then we need to feel like basically the motion is that your arm is externally rotating. So in my arm and my shoulder here is externally rotating. So you can see here, if I do that external rotation, that gets my elbow working in. That's the feeling that I want to have. If your elbow is working out and behind you, your arm is internally rotating, which is what you don't want in the start of the downswing. That gets you in a position where you're kind of like this, or it gets you into a position where you don't rotate and you get like this and then flip like that. So it's typically not going to be a good position to be in. The only way you can really get away with it is if you just rotate like crazy. So like a Jim Furyk, for example, he gets that club up here and then he gets the arm kind of behind him, but he rotates like crazy into the golf ball. He has a lot of rotate. His hips are like 70 degrees open or something crazy like that at impact. So that you have to have a lot of flexibility to be able to do that. 99.9% of people aren't going to be able to do that. So you need to get that arm externally rotating as you're coming down. So one thing you can do is you can do some one-arm swings. A good drill for this is just to do some one-arm swings where you take you're swinging with your right arm, but you take your lead arm and you go like that with your wrist and then place it basically on your tricep back here, underneath your upper arm here, and put your knuckles on your tricep, and then just do some swings, right? Where I'm going up to the top, right? And I'm pulling this arm to externally rotate it as I'm coming in. I'm just doing some swings. I'm doing that. Now I start out with some short swings. Just do some practice swings, and you can actually hit some balls doing that as well. It may seem really, really hard, but it's actually a lot easier than what you think. But yeah, do that. Get that sensation of doing that, and then once you have that proper feeling, try to get the same kind of feeling getting without the arm there and getting that arm to work into the body correctly. All right, so Charlie Z says, I've been working on that, and if I'm hitting small shots, I can really get it to draw. The bigger the swing, the more it falls apart. So that's why you just got to break it down slow. It sounds like you're kind of going from a little short swing and then all of a sudden go into a long swing. Just really bring it up really slowly. You know, add, if you hit a slice, right? So if you're getting the draw, you get it here, then okay, I'm going to go a little bit longer and I'm going to get the same thing. If I get it, I'm going to go a little bit longer, I'm going to do the same thing. But the moment I don't get it, I need to back it back down again and try to get the draw, and then try to bring it back up. It may take you 1,000 reps to do it to get to where you're up higher. It may even take you more than that. But you just got to start out slow, build up the speed. And it sounds like you're just trying to walk before you can run a little bit, right? So it's going to take some time and reps, but you'll get there eventually for sure. One thing that you can do to help with this as well is to set up a swing station. So what that would look like, I got a couple head covers here. You need to be swinging in to out to hit the draw. So you can set up a swing station that forces you to swing in to out. So if I grab a ball, your ball would be about right here, right? This is just a head cover, a head into the left of it, and this is behind and to the right of it. If I swing over the top, I'm going to hit that. Align or that head cover, and you can use noodle. You know, I have a noodle here. You can place a noodle to the side. You can get these for like $2 at Target or something like that. You can place it to the side like that. That forces you to swing from the inside. But I also like this, where you just have two obstacles in there, and it's giving you feedback. It's telling your brain, because a lot of what we do, pretty much everything we do in life for the most part, is to avoid discomfort, right? So it's not comfortable hitting one of these things. It doesn't feel very good. So your brain's telling you don't do that. So you're going to try harder to get that path to move into out. So you can see here, if I set this up, I swing into out, I miss. I almost hit my dog. I miss both of those, and I'm just going to build this up and just swing into out, into out, into out with that face closed to get those nice draws. You can also try to exaggerate it. When you go to the longer swings, don't just try to hit a little draw, just like what you're doing in your short swing. Try to hit a snap hook that starts to the right and curves to the left. Try to really get that to wrap around. You're just exaggerating your feel to get the desired result that you want. So start out slow, build up the speed, set up a swing station, exaggerate as much as possible. It should help out quite a bit. All right, and then he goes on to say, do you have any suggestions on how to continue getting the draw as the swing gets bigger? What do you think might fall apart? And swing thoughts. Yep, I would just do exactly what I just talked about there. All right, so Ali S says, I'm using the same swing for irons and driver. I hit iron well with driver, sometimes as a pull or a push. Anything you suggest to correct? So sounds like your strike might not be very good, because that's a pretty, typically, misses kind of go together. So, like the push and the pull don't go together. Those aren't a product of the same swing fault. Because typically, when your intention is the same, your fault is going to be the same pretty much every time. And even though the result of the shot may be different, the fault is basically the same. But a push and a pull, those are not products of the same issue. The only issue they would really be a product would be for the most part, face strikes, just not striking the ball in the center of the face anywhere near it, just all over the club face. So that's what I would guess is going on. So it's just as an example of swing faults or the ball flight issues that go together, like a pull and a slice go together, because they're both issues of the path being in the wrong direction, right? The only difference is that my face is open on one and closed on the other. To hit a push and a pull, your face and path would have to be in two completely different directions, and you're just not going to do that typically. So now if it's a tiny push and a tiny pull, like we're talking like a couple of yards, that can happen, but not not big time pushes and pulls that are like actually huge misses. So it's most likely a strike location issue. So what I'd recommend doing is get some foot powder spray. I mean, get it at any pharmacy or anything like that, and spray it on the club face and see where you're striking it on the club face. Most likely, you're going to see kind of all over the map on the club face would be what I would guess. Again, it's hard for me to guess or say based on, I'm just trying to make an educated guess on what's going on. But what I would then do is I would actually intentionally try to hit different parts of the face. So I would try to intentionally hit the ball on the heel, try to intentionally hit the ball on the toe, try to intentionally hit the ball in the center of the face, and alternate between those. And you're not going to be successful every single time. In fact, probably in the beginning, you're going to be unsuccessful quite a bit, but you keep trying until you're successful, and then you move on to the next one. So let's say you start out with the center strike. The first one's on the toe, the second one's on the heel, the third one's on the toe. You keep doing until you're successful. Once you get it in the center, then I would actually intentionally try to hit it on the heel or on the toe. Now, you may be asking yourself, why in the world would I ever try to hit it on the wrong part of the face? Well, the reason is that this is what's called interleaving practice, and this is actually scientifically proven to help you improve your skill faster. So the skill you're trying to achieve is hitting it in the center of the face. If you go to both ends of the spectrum, it's going to give you overall better sense, feel, and awareness of where the center is. I know it may seem unconventional, but trust me, it does work. So this is what we do in our ball striking masterclass to help people really hone in their ball striking. So hit it until you're successful, then go the next one. Then hit until you're successful, and keep track of how many attempts it takes you, and try to beat it. Try to beat your attempts every single time. Now, the other thing that it does is if you ever start to get a tendency to hit it on the toe or on the heel, you can then call upon your feeling of striking it on the other part of the face to be able to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you don't know how to hit the ball on the heel or understand the feeling of how to do that, then you're going to have a hard time doing that out on the course, because you're just not going to trust it, right? It's going to feel too uncomfortable for you. So the way that would work is, let's say you go out there and you're on the course and you're just hitting everything on the toe. Everything is just off the toe, toe strike, toe strike, toe strike. Well, you can adjust your feel to hitting it on the heel, and what that will do is it will more than likely move that strike closer to the center of the club face. And now you're going to start hitting it solid again. And you keep doing that until you actually start matching your feel with real, right? If you're trying to hit it in the heel and you're still hitting it in the center, you keep doing that. If you try to hit it in the heel and now you're starting to hit it in the heel again, just ease off that feeling a little bit to get it in the center, because our feel is constantly changing. It's not a static thing. It's moving around. So we have to a lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. When tour players are out, when they're practicing, when they're warming up for a round, what they're doing is they're getting a sense and feel of where their swing is that day. Is there more of a tendency? Are they hitting some heel strikes? Is their path a little bit too much in to out? Is it too much out to in? Is the face a little bit too open, a little bit too closed? Now, and then they're trying to kind of calibrate that out in the course, or they're finding what it is. Maybe they're repeatedly hitting a nice draw out there when they're trying to hit it straight. Well, they may just go out there and just think, well, hey, I've got a nice draw going today. That's what I'm going to play with. I'm just going to play with a nice draw. That's basically what it comes down to. And they may also go out there and, you know what, I'm going to try to hit it. I'm going to need to have a kind of a fade feel with my swing today in order to hit it straight. So that's basically a lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. All right, so let's keep scrolling through, get some questions. Sean F says, thanks, no problem. So John M says, just signed up in order to PRG our device. It won't come for 3 weeks. My question is, should I wait until I have the device before I commit myself to the course? I need new clubs. Should I wait until after the course to buy them? So a couple good questions there. It's really it's up to you as far as when you can start the course. You can wait or not wait. You can do the course without it and then do it again when you because it's 3 weeks long, so you can do the course and then do it again when you get the PRGR and see how you do. Generally, people do better when they have the PRGR, when they have a Club Ed speed device of some sort to tell them if they're doing is actually helping. Otherwise, you're just not going to know. So it's really completely up to you. But I would definitely recommend doing the course with the PRGR at some point, so that way you're getting feedback. As far as getting new clubs, if you want new clubs, just get new clubs. If you're waiting around for your swing to be exactly where it needs to be or things like that, that day is never going to come. I'm not saying that you're not going to improve your golf swing. I'm just saying that when you improve your golf swing, there's going to be other things that you're going to want to improve. It never ends. There's tour players who want their things to change in their swing. The day is never going to end when you're going to have the swing that you want. So get clubs. If you want to get clubs, you need new clubs. Just get them now instead of waiting until later, because your swing doesn't change that much that you're going to need new clubs. Now, if you find that you gain so much club head speed that you need to get your clubs reshafted, and most likely it's not going to be that big of a difference, but it could make a small difference. It's possible. So, if it's just a matter of waiting a few weeks, to get new clubs, then that's not really that long. But yeah, my philosophy is on that is that your swing's never going to be exactly where you want it. That day is never going to come where you're just done, trying to improve. So you may as well just get the clubs now instead. Because I get that all the time where people is like, well, should I wait until, because my swing is going to change so much after I go through this program, should I wait until later to get clubs? And just get them now. You can always get clubs adjusted too. If they're a little bit off, they can bend the clubs. They can do a lot of things with clubs to kind of get them where you want them. If they actually end up being really far off, which usually isn't the case. So Charlie Z says that club twist is what I'm referring to, falling apart. Yeah, so I just exaggerate it as much as you possibly can. Swing into out, exaggerate that club twist as much as you possibly can. That's just how you have to go through it. So work on the move drill where you're coming down here and you're twisting that face down to the ground. Right, so you're just twisting that face down to the ground, exaggerating as much as you can. I mean, if I brought this down into impact, my face would be slammed shut. So it's a crazy exaggeration. So you just need to exaggerate that as much as you possibly can. Strengthening your grip can help. It's not going to necessarily it's not going to replace twisting the handle, because you still are going to need to do that some. But it can make it to where it's a little bit easier. So Sean, it said it might have been one of the live lessons that you did last week. It's a great tip with the rope, and then I use it with the correct takeaway. Everything else seems to take care of itself. Thanks again. Oh, so you're talking about the rope thing. Yeah, so if it's a highlight, I'm not sure if it was a highlight or not, but if it's a highlight, you can go to the office hours highlights at the top there, and you can find it. You can find it there, or you can go to the archived office hours. I don't know what day it was that I said that, but the archived office hours you can also do. So Charlie says, got it, thanks. That helps, no problem. So Kevin S says, hi Q, at what point in the downswing do you start rotating the wrist back and down towards the ball? It really just depends. It depends on if you have this face square or not. It only matters how the club arrives to impact. So if you're coming down and you're twisting this handle down and it's already square, there's not going to be a lot of rolling over of the hands. It's going to be very little. It's more of strengthen it, and then you're basically holding it through impact. Whereas if you're someone who has more of a cupped wrist coming down and you're coming down here, you're going to need to roll that over at some point. So there's no point in the swing where it's like, okay, right here, you have to start doing this. It depends on what you do initially in the golf swing. So if you're someone who's a flip roller, it's most likely later that you're going to be doing that. If you're someone who does the move, you're not really going to be flip rolling at all. You're going to be kind of turning into the golf ball instead, which is ideal. That'd be the ideal way to do it. But this is functional. I mean, you can come down here and come in and flip and square up the face that way. It's functional. It's not the most efficient way to hit the golf ball. It's not what the best players do. But it can be absolutely functional to do it that way. It's just a matter of, are you twisting the handle here and then turning through impact, or are you coming down steep and then flip rolling through impact? And where that starts, it can be anywhere. It just has to be squared up at impact. I know that's not a definitive answer to your question, but what I'd recommend working on for you, most likely what you need to work on, is getting that tennis racket drill in the move course where you're getting that face square earlier and you're turning, you're more or less holding. Once you get that face square, you don't need to do anything else. You just need to turn into impact. Because if you turn that handle down and you don't turn and you flip, that face is just going to be slammed shut, right? So we need to turn into impact so that way we can get the hands in front of the golf ball and be able to have that nice square club face. So Carolyn M says, please demonstrate correct hybrid ball position, ball address position. Basically, one ball or two balls forward of the middle of the stance would be a good hybrid. And I don't have a hybrid in here, so I can't technically show you exactly with a hybrid. But if this is the middle of my stance, right, this would be basically where I'd play a wedge. One ball forward of that is, oops, so this would be the middle of my stance. One ball forward of that would be pretty much where I play everything else. You can play your hybrid right here as well. And then one ball forward of that is where I personally play my hybrids and my fairway woods. But anywhere in this area, there would be 1 to 2 balls forward of the middle of your stance is going to be a good place to play the hybrid. But I just experiment with that a little bit and find what works best for you. So Alia says, how much should the wrist movement to shallow the club to avoid the underplane? Any video suggestion to square the club in the downswing? So that's all going to be the move course. You're looking for the move course. So if you want to go to the move course, just click the house icon at the top of the page, and that's going to take you to the home page. And then if you scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses, and you'll see the move right there. So basically, to find what the plane is, kind of the easiest way to do that is, one, the camera angle when you're looking at this on video has to be correct. So this camera angle is not correct that we're seeing right here. It's too high. It's like above my head a little bit. So we want the camera angle to be about waist level. And then to set up the camera, I would place an alignment stick on the ground, or a club on the ground, and I would point it out at a target out in the distance. And then I would set up my camera to where my camera is set up right down this club or alignment stick. And this isn't even lined up with it. So if I line it up, so I'd say that that's pretty much lined up with that. There we go. So that's pretty much lined up with that, have that pointed out to a target out in the distance. Now, when I go to address this golf ball, I want to have my hands directly above that club or alignment stick. So I go to set up to this. You can see my hands are directly above that. If I were to drop something from my hands, it would land pretty close to it anyway. It would land pretty much on top of it. That's going to give you the perfect camera angle. What I see countless times in students that record their swing is they set up the video down their target line. And when you do that, so let's say I had the video set up right here. When you do that, if I'm swinging down and I have the club right here, it looks like it's way inside. But if I go to where it's the right camera angle, it's actually perfectly on plane. Whereas if I swing down here, this looks like it's on plane, let me go to where it would actually be correct. Now I'm actually over the top. So that's why it's important to have this camera angle correct, because otherwise it's gonna skew what you're seeing. So make sure you have that camera angle basically set up pretty close to your toe line, close to your hands, where your hands are lined up. That's going to give you that proper camera angle to be able to see things correctly. So what you do, if you get that camera angle right, just draw a line from that the hosel of the club up through the point of my right elbow here. That's going to give you a good, it's not exact, but it's going to give you a good indication of where the swing plane is. And then we want that club coming in a little bit shallower or parallel to that elbow plane is what we call it. We want that to be a little bit shallower or parallel to it. That's going to be essentially on plane. Now I can have the club out here and be parallel to it, but that's still steep. So I need the club coming down inside of that or on that line to be essentially on plane. If I'm like this, right, I'm too much, I'm going to have to make a compensation to get. Now, some players, they do that. Like a Daniel Berger, he has this club really, he's like this at the top, super shallowed out, and then he basically gets it on plane. He goes the other way. He actually steepens the shaft as he's coming down. That's a hard thing to do. He has a very unorthodox swing, but it works really well for him, obviously. Most players are going to be using gravity, using a more natural motion, which is club going up more steeply and then shallowing out in the downswing. So, but that elbow plane is going to give you an indication of, are you over shallowing it or not? It's pretty rare that I see someone actually over shallow the club. So for most people, shallowing it as much as you possibly can is probably the best bet. So Jim M says, Q, you said to one of your answers that you pull down your arms. I don't know if I do that. Let me read that again. You said to one of your answers, you pull down your arms. I don't know if I do that or not. What I do is turn my hips, then my shoulders, and then my arms come from automatic. Then I swing through with the arms. I do the move. Is that how it happens? I mean, it sounds like you're in the right sequence. What I was referring to was actually what someone feels, not the reality of what's going on. I was talking about Sergio and how he feels like he's yanking the chain down, right? That's a feel for him. That's not the reality of what he's doing. It's just a feel. But it sounds like you're on the right track there with what you're talking about. And your feel may be closer to the reality of what's going on. Thanks. Have a great lunch. Miss seeing your dog. She's here. She's just laying over here because she is in the way. So Cliff R says, thank you. It was more about the bowing of the left wrist as opposed to getting on plane that I was confused about. Your answer makes complete sense. No problem. I could help. Marlon M says, typically, what part of the ball are you focusing on? I'm always focusing on the part of the ball that I'm trying to hit. So that would typically be the very, very back part of the golf ball is what I'm focusing on. But if I'm trying to hit like a fade or a draw, I might focus on a little bit different part of the golf ball. Or if I'm trying to hit a big old hook or slice. So basically, for a draw, since the face needs to be closed to the path, I usually think about hitting the outside part of the ball. I'm focusing on that. So I'm thinking I'm swinging out here, and I'm hitting the outside part of the ball. And then for a fade, I'm thinking that I'm swinging more outside in, and I'm trying to hit the inside part of the golf ball. But that's about it. Now, that doesn't mean that, again, feel is relative. And a lot of these things are relative. They're not things like, in order to play good golf, you have to focus on that part of the golf ball. That is not the case at all. There's lots of players that don't even look at the golf ball when they hit. If you look at videos of David Duval at impact, he looks like this, right? He's looking way out here. Annika Sorenstam, the same thing. So there's lots of there's lots of ways to do it. You just have to find what works best for you. But that's what I do. I focus on the part of the ball that I want to hit, and that works the best for me. So James Q says, you have any thoughts about same length clubs? I'm sure I've never used same length clubs. But to me, the whole thing behind it doesn't really make a ton of sense. The reasoning is so for me, when I look at same length clubs, I can see why someone would want to do that because, okay, well, I'm just swinging the same club every single time. It's the same length. I'm going to have the same feel with every single club. And it's going to allow me to be very, very consistent. But that's not the reality because if you actually did that, if you had the same feel with every single club and they were all the same length, well, your pitching wedge and your wedges would go way too high, way too high. They would be a mile up in the air because you have so much more speed with them. They're just going to go a mile up in the air, and then your upper irons are going to be too low. If your 4 iron, your 3 iron is the same length as your 7 iron, you don't have as much speed, and it's going to go too low. So to compensate for that, you have to weight all these clubs very differently to make all the trajectories work out. Well, now this club is a much different weight than my other club. It's not the same anymore. So I don't see the point of that. If it's still going to be different to get better results, then it doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, it's a preference thing. If you prefer to swing all the clubs with the same length and just have the weight of the clubs be very different, then sure, yeah, then it might be a good fit for you. But also, I would much rather just have the length of the clubs be a little bit different. That's just what I'm used to. It wouldn't make any sense. So it's not like I don't look at it as being something that you absolutely wouldn't work. It can absolutely work, but you just have to, things are still going to have to be different. And the other thing is that your driver is still going to be longer. Your upper club, your fairway woods are still going to be longer. You're not going to have your driver and your fairway woods the same length, right? So you're still going to have clubs in your bag that are different lengths. So you're swinging different clubs. So if the idea is that I'm going to swing the same, I'm going to have the sensation that I'm swinging a different club or I'm swinging the same club every single time, then that doesn't really hold true because you're not. In order for it to work, you won't be swinging the same club. The clubs will be weighted very differently, and your longer clubs, your driver is still going to be longer. So it's not for me. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But obviously it works for some people like Bryson. Bryson has all his wedges. I don't know exactly what clubs are the same length, but his driver is definitely longer. I would imagine his 3 wood's definitely longer. I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure all his wedges and probably most of his irons are going to be in that same length category. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining me today. We'll be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Thursday, so 3 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you all next time.